Good afternoon, and thank you for joining CIMCON Lighting's webinar on our managed services portfolio. Our presenter today is Bob Flaherty, Vice President of Customer Success and Managed Services.
Thank you, Heidi. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again for joining us today. And for the next 20 to 30 minutes, we're going to talk to you a little bit about our managed service offering, or our remote infrastructure management services for lighting controls networks. And we'll have time for questions and answers if you have any, well, all through this or at the end. And I'm happy to try to answer whatever we can for you. But we're pretty excited about these services, and they have been doing quite well for us so far. We find a lot of our customers have been interested in these, so we thought we'd bring them to a broader audience. But let's talk about what we're going to go through today. First, we'll start off a little bit of introduction to who we are for those of you that might be new to CIMCON. As well as talk a little bit about lighting controls, where they're heading, just to set the stage for the purpose of the managed service offering that we have. And as you can see here, we'll cover the ROI about this in lighting controls operations as well. For those of you that are not familiar with us, CIMCON powers multi-sensor smart city solutions. So we're really focused on helping cities improve the quality of life for residents, for businesses, help save money with things like energy usage and other expenses that cities might incur, as well as to provide a platform for rolling out additional smart city solutions, whether that be in the area of waste management, parking management, noise detection, video analytics, all those types of things that cities are now looking at. Today we'll focus mostly on how we're working in the lighting controls aspects of smart cities, but CIMCON has a much broader portfolio of solutions and services we can provide to cities and municipalities today. Well, the reason why we decided to construct this portfolio of managed services is based upon what we were hearing from our customers. And we could probably categorize the comments we heard into three different types of customers that we deal with. First being cities and towns, utilities, and also retail and auto dealerships that are using lighting to improve the look and feel of maybe the retail organization or the auto dealership, as well as ensure safety, reduce vandalism, and theft. But what we're hearing from the different constituencies are things like in the cities and towns are trying to deploy smart cities technologies, and realizing that what they're putting in place is a backbone or a network, if you will, which brings with it other challenges, but also many, many benefits. We hear our utility customers talking to us about they're looking for new ways to bring new services to their customer base to help improve the attractiveness of cities and towns, how to attract more businesses to those towns, how to just improve the way that they're servicing their customers overall. So a lot of interesting challenges coming into play here that can be partially addressed by technology, but also addressed with the right processes and the right people or skill sets involved. When we first look at smart lighting, and we see that really as the first step into a smart city roadmap or a series of smart city solutions that a town or city could undertake, lighting provides that foundation. When you put in place a controls-based infrastructure, you're really putting in place a network foundation that can then be used to move data and interconnect different solutions, different technologies, different devices, and provide that information back in some fashion so that somebody can take action, make decisions, or understand what's been happening. Now that first step can lead to many additional steps in a smart city with all these different types of applications, as I alluded to earlier. And again, today we'll focus on how do we help cities get there by ensuring that their foundation, the city lighting or smart lighting, stays available and performing as they expect it to, so it can support these additional services. What we've seen time and time again is that there's a lot of good reasons to put a controls network in place, a smart lighting controls network in place. However, it does bring with it some challenges or things that need to be answered, if you will, along the way. And they can kind of fall into these three different categories, really. First, we hear often the objective is, well, we want to reduce our energy. We also want to reduce the maintenance and the cost of labor associated with keeping the lights on at the right times and off at the right times, just as important, right? Well, part of that is to make sure that we have a performing network of lights. And to do that, to be able to do that in an efficient manner, we want to be able to proactively identify where there might be cost savings through adjustment of light through the control. So, for example, dimming lights from midnight on to early hours of the morning so that you can use less energy when less people are around that would need to be able to see, but still enough light so that people can get around if they do need to be. Other challenges are, how do we make the life better, the quality of life better for residents, for local businesses? And part of that is being able to quickly identify and resolve an issue that might be associated with lighting. Often we think about that as when a light goes off, but sometimes that's when a light might be on, or especially with LEDs, it might be too bright. We had one of our customers once call us in to tell us that an LED light was shining brightly in the bedroom of an elderly woman in the city, and it turned out she was the mother-in-law of the mayor, and it seemed like a really good idea to see if we could quickly dim that light, put that on a dimming schedule so that it wouldn't be keeping her up at night. Hard to do when you don't have a lighting controls network in place, but when you do have a controls network in place, you can take that kind of quick action through the software provided to manage and control the lights. And then, of course, there's how do we make better decisions? And that really becomes all about the data. What's the data coming from the network? We can see our usage. We can see how much power is being used. We can see how often lights are going on and off. Are they going on off the right time? And provide that data back in a series of reports and alerts so that somebody can take an action or make an informed decision to take action. So great objectives, carry with them some challenges, but all easily addressed within the solutions we're talking about today. But let's take a little closer look at what this controls network really kind of looks like. And from CIMCON's perspective, we deploy what's called a mesh-based network, and some of you are familiar with that as you're users of the CIMCON solutions. And in a mesh network, it's kind of nice because it has some built-in resiliency. Each of the controllers that might sit on top of a streetlight looks for a path back to the gateway that services it, and if that path is blocked for some reason, maybe one light, the power to another light is out, it'll find a different path through other controllers that are on the network to get back to that gateway. So you can be assured that as long as the lights are working and there's power, that the controllers will be talking back to the gateway, which ultimately will talk back to the cloud, where the data ends up in a database or a data repository, and then can be viewed through our software, and the lights can be controlled and managed through the software. So very straightforward set of solutions and capabilities, but under the covers, a fairly complex, complicated, if you will, network that is a hybrid of your traditional IT networks and what might be a traditional industrial network. So that in and of itself sometimes will cause some operational teams to pause a little bit when they're looking at these things. So let's break this down a little more. That network I just showed you can be really viewed as three distinct components that enable this to function properly. The first being the controller, the streetlight controller that sits on top of the light. It plugs directly into the light in a twist lock fashion, so it's securely in there. And that's essentially a small little computer in the node, or we call it a node often, and which will then talk to other controllers or nodes in the network that form that mesh. It in turn speaks back to the gateway, and the gateway now takes that RF-based network communication and it turns it into an IP-based communication that we're used to when we think about IT or cloud-based computing. And the data goes back to the CMS software we call Lightingale, which can be accessed via the cloud or on your own on-premise of your own network if you choose not to put it in the cloud. But you can see each of these have very distinct functions. The controller monitors the light, controls the light, it will hold a schedule, and then communicate back to the cloud through the gateway. And the gateway's purpose really is to just do that, be that mechanism to take that RF-based communication and send it off to the cloud so that the software can operate on it. It brings a lot of value, but because this is a network we're putting out in place, it has some operational requirements that are carried along with it. We want to make sure that those controllers are monitored to make sure they're operating properly, make sure they're communicating the data when they should, and also being able to send the configuration to that node, or the schedule, if you will, of how that node should control the light. The gateway, as I mentioned, this function is really to pull those controllers, pull the data in, and move it along back to the cloud, and the software enables you to interact with the network, operate the network, control it, manage it, and then report from it. So all good, great capabilities, but this basically means it requires some care and feeding. Unlike just using dumb photocells, which aren't communicating but are very limited in what they can do for you, this is a network you're putting out in place. And what that's resulted in is some of our customers have kind of told us, if I summarize this, was, hey, we don't know what we don't know. We haven't managed this kind of network before. We're not sure what this RF communication spectrum is, and we're also not that sure what's going on in the cloud, because we're seeing a lot of cities and organizations outsourcing parts or all of their IT function. So there's fewer and fewer network and server administrators around that might have that IT side of the coin knowledge versus the industrial side of the coin knowledge. So we're seeing a reduction in the labor pool or the skill sets that are needed to manage this kind of network in cities as they try to control expenses and look at what they can outsource. Yet we're seeing the need to roll out smart city solutions, which by definition will carry with them a requirement to do some level of care and feeding of that network, some management of that network. So what we decided to do was to really look at what does it take to unlock this promise of what lighting controls can bring. And it's not just the promise of lighting controls, it's putting that foundation out there for the future smart city types of applications that could ride on top of that. And one thing that we know for sure, whether it's an indoor or an outdoor network, it needs to be managed. It needs to be watched to make sure it's available and performing as to expectations. And when something goes wrong, there needs to be the right processes and tools and people in place to take action to resolve that issue, or just to do the basic configuration of things like scheduling and dimming and looking at how this thing might be deployed and that it performs well. We also have to make sure that the data is flowing so that we can report on it, analyze it, take action to improve things. And we have to understand that we're introducing a network into what traditionally is a non-technical segment of the market. Lighting traditionally has not included these kinds of networks, and now they do. So it places a new kind of burden of management on the teams that typically would manage the lighting in many cities that we've come across. So there's this convergence of skills that are needed, both from the traditional lighting electrical side, we're taking electricians and now combining them with IT support and operations personnel. So it's a very interesting paradigm that it sets up, and we're looking for ways to help eliminate that as a possible obstacle or help accelerate you to value. So what if you could accelerate the time to value? What if you could realize that ROI, the controls investment, faster than maybe you expected? What if you were able to ensure lighting service levels were met? That might be a new term for some people, lighting service levels, taken from the IT world of service level agreements. Now that there's a network there, now the capabilities are there, there's a heightened expectation of what we can deliver from a lighting controls network and the performance of those LED lights. What if we could simply augment our operations team and get access to seasoned experts when we need them and as many as we need, and do that in a variable way, kind of an elastic way, just like the cloud promises some elastic computing power to people. You can go up and down as you need it. What if you could do that with a support team of experts in this area? What if it would help you can lower overall operating costs, improve efficiencies, reduce downtime? You can read the slide as well as I can. But would it reduce your overall risk? Would it take away some of those obstacles that might be in the way of saying, well, how do I manage this network once it's out there? Well, so to address that, we've introduced a portfolio of remote managed services. As you can see here, LightHands, SOS, and LightAssure. And we try to construct these in a manner that fit the different types of customers that we have. It's not necessarily a kind of traditional bronze, silver, gold approach. It's actually distinct different deliverables for different types of customers. LightHands are for those that say, hey, I really just need some ad hoc assistance now and then. There are times I need to change a configuration of a certain group of streetlights, and maybe I don't have time to do it, or I don't quite remember how to do it, or I would like just some expert to look it over for me. And that's a call-in service request-based type of service that says, please help me do that, and then our experts would be able to react quickly and help you put that in place. LightSOS is for that kind of customer that's just saying, hey, I want somebody to keep an eye on this for me 24/7, and when something goes wrong, something that needs to be addressed, let me know what that is, where it is, what needs to be addressed, and then I'll take care of it. So you could think of that as a eyes-only service. We're keeping an eye on it. We'll notify and escalate, but we're not putting our hands on the network. Your team continues to do that. And then there's LightAssure, which is for those kind of customers that are saying, I want to get the value of a lighting controls network, but I really don't have the team, or I don't want to build a team to have to manage it on a day-to-day basis. So why don't you do that for me? In that case, we'll keep an eye on it, but then we'll also take the action. If we see something wrong, we'll work to resolve it. If we see something that needs to change from a scheduling or configuration standpoint, we take that action. It needs to be updated, we'll do proactive performance management. All those kinds of things to ensure that that network is going to perform and is available to meet your expectations. Where we draw the boundary, we like very clear boundaries so we know what we do and what our customer does is we don't provide things like electricians and bucket trucks to visit poles. We would dispatch out to your contractors for that. You've got those relationships in place. You know who works well in your city and town, and we wouldn't want to change that. So if we dig a little bit deeper, light hands, on-demand support, as I mentioned, you can call in, either call in, email us, go to our customer portal, and submit the request. And this gives you a pretty good list of examples of the types of things we would do under the light hand service. So again, this is one way really just on an ad hoc basis to get to some experts 24/7 that understand this technology, understand how the networks work, and can help you get something done quickly. Really as an ad hoc, and it's packaged in a way so it's very simple to consume, and you pretty much just are paying for what you're using. And the light SOS standpoint, as I mentioned, we're keeping an eye on things. We're monitoring this remotely, and we'll drive out notifications and escalations when we see critical issues happening, or we see a trend happening where we think something might go wrong. Let's say we're seeing certain spikes in voltage on a light or a group of lights. We're seeing that happen over time. We would then be able to push that kind of report out to your team so that you can take further action before that starts to damage LED drivers or damages the controllers or possibly causes outages in the city. So a lot of things that we can keep an eye on there, pushing out the reports, and we base our underlying processes on really taking this from the IT world of management of a network, following what's called the IT infrastructure library framework. And if any of you are familiar with the IT side of things, that might resonate with you in terms of essentially the de facto way of doing IT management, a set of processes and procedures of which to follow to ensure that you're going to have an efficiently managed network that focuses on uptime, availability, and performance. And this can be combined with the light hand service bundles as well, so that you might say, yeah, keep an eye on it for me, and I want some light hand service when I need it, but I don't want you to manage the whole network for me. Where Light Assure would come in is just that, is where you say, you know what, I don't want to have any hands on this network from a monitoring and management standpoint, other than sending people out to the poles to do physical work. CIMCON, you take care of everything for us, from monitoring all the way down to incident problem management, change management, and making sure that things are reporting properly and keep it up and running. It's very much a service level driven set of services here within Light Assure. And as you can see, some of the benefits associated with Light Assure really comes down to being able to give you that immediate 24/7 access. We can drive additional savings around energy and opportunities. One of the key attributes of Light Assure is, since we're responsible for managing that network on your behalf, as part of that service, we're looking for those opportunities to save additional dollars on energy usage, looking for those opportunities to improve the schedules of lights, and being able to point out to you places that you might be able to get more efficiencies out of that. This will help you free up your own staff to focus on more strategic projects versus the day-to-day plumbing, if you will, of a lighting network. And a different way maybe to look at this, if you wanted to see how these stack up against each other in a comparison chart, as you can see, the first one, light hands, sold as service bundles. You might say, I just want 3 service requests a month, or I want 10 service requests a month. However, whatever size you want, we can accommodate that, and that's all you pay for. Light OS and Light Assure, it's a monthly service fee based upon a per controller fee. So again, to try to fit in your budget in the same way you would be paying for example, the SaaS-based software or other expenses within managing it. And what you should see is an overall positive ROI based compared to if you were to try to do this yourself, because you're able to take advantage of fractional resources on our side, the 24/7 basis. And that's probably one of the biggest advantages some of our customers have cited, is that at the end of the day, when something does go wrong, it invariably goes wrong at the worst possible time for the people that have to go deal with it. Right? You get interrupted at your child's birthday party on a weekend. or it's the middle of the night. I mean, when are you going to notice a light's not working? Most likely it's the middle of the night. Our operation centers are staffed 24/7, so you don't have to worry about interrupting people's lives that might have to be on call in today's current operational model. So how do we do this? So I've talked a little bit about the operational model, or alluded to it, but I'll give you a picture of how the data flows, if you will. So on the left-hand side, where the streetlight might be, as well as other smart city applications you could deploy, the data is collected and sent over the lighting control network via the RF network that's out there. It goes into the cloud, which ends up in our Lightingale management software, which is the same software you would use if you were managing the network yourself. But that also then feeds into the rest of our operations center tools and processes, which is staffed 7x24 and backed by a fairly robust set of workflows set up in our service desk in our client portal. And then we're able to manage multiple clients from this one platform internally. So that enables us to be very efficient, which then in turn allows us to be very aggressive in how we price these services so that you can get the most out of the investment you're making. Once we get alerts and data into the operations center, if it's determined that somebody needs to go physically visit the pole, for example, we're seeing that there's some driver issues for a set of lights or there's some voltage issues, then we can give that very specific information to your crews that work on the streets so that they're equipped when they go out to that street light with the right equipment, with the right knowledge and information so they can get the problem resolved very, very quickly and avoid multiple trips back and forth to the pole. So it's a nice closed loop system. We can track all that work, and all that work that's being done in the dispatch and the repairs, we record all that in our service desk in a ticket, so you'd always be able to go back in the history and see what happened when and look at trends of usage as well as trends of work that are taking place. So how would you actually submit something? So this is a quick example of if you were a Light Hands customer, how would it work for you? It's as simple as going to our customer portal and putting in the subject you need, choosing from our different types of requests that you can make. In this case, you pick Light Hands service, and that'll take you to another drop-down menu where you can then pick the kind of service you want, and if it's not there, you can certainly put a description of the service you're looking for or the help you're looking for, as well as identify the priority below that. Simply submit that, and then the service level clock kicks in, and you would receive a response back to us from our team within the agreed-upon service level time frame. And then we would also be reporting back to you not only on the work that's been going on and energy usage and performance and things like that, we're going to provide you feedback and reports on our performance as well. So you'll be able to see if we're hitting our SLAs with you or if we're not, and if we need to have some remediation somewhere. So a very transparent set of services intended to help you get to a positive ROI as quickly as possible on your overall investment in lighting controls and smart city solutions. And if you want to compare this to how it might look if you did it yourself, this is typically what we see. There's always a bit of a debate on, can we do it better? Can you do it better? And it's really not that kind of discussion in our minds. It really is about where do you want to put your resources? Where do you want to invest, and where do you expect value to be returned? One of the nice things with the managed service approach is because we've done this multiple times, we're doing it with multiple customers, we have a lot more efficiencies, and we can leverage investments in tools and processes across multiple customers. So it means our startup time's a lot faster because we just have done it many, many times. And that because we're managing things like updating of firmware and updating of software within the context of managed services, you don't have those incremental operating expenses you might have when you do it on your own. So the ultimate result is what you see in front of you here is that there's a consistent value return through the managed services based upon those things. So not about who knows this better, who's smarter, who's not. It's really about who's doing this more and where you want to focus your people's time, where you want to focus your investments, and what value you're looking to get in return. So it's a tried and true model from the IT world that we're now applying to this outdoor network world. And at the end of all this, our belief in what some of our early customers certainly have seen with this right away was that, that the service is very focused on avoiding issues, so we're very proactive. This is one of the service areas where we're incented as much as you are to make things better, because the more issues we can take out of the network, the more proactive we can be, the lower our costs are to deliver the service to you. And if the more we can do that, the higher the availability and the better the performance of the network is for you, and the higher and faster ROI you receive on that network investment as well. So it's truly a win-win with this kind of service. You can see the different the benefits that are listed here. What our customers have been seeing and enjoying. Accelerated innovation will bring new ideas to the table. You have that access to these experts that you don't have to have on your payroll. So, for example, if one of our operational team members may be having some difficulty figuring something out, they have an entire engineering team that they can lean on to dig deeper into the problems. So we'll get to the resolution faster, and that's just all part of the service. We have access to those kind of individuals and resources. So a lot of good reasons to do this, but I think really at the end of the day, it's all about improving the satisfaction of our customer, but also the residents of your towns and cities, or your customers, and if you're in a retail organization, and reducing the risk of putting something like this in place. And that's one of our key objectives here, was to minimize or eliminate any perception of risk with these types of environments, because they do, as I said, it's a network you're putting in place. It requires some of that care and feeding, if you will, to make sure it's performing and available. So that's all I really had for our presentation. Happy to open this up to any type of questions you might have. So we can take a look to see if you can submit questions on chat. So go to the chat button on your screen, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to address those. And we'll give a couple of minutes for you if you have any questions to ask them. And Heidi, I don't know if you were seeing any questions coming in at all, but why don't you take a look and let me know if you see any.
One of the questions is, how long would it take to implement a managed services offering?
Oh, good question. So, and as I mentioned, there's 3 different offerings. So the time to implement or get the service turned on does vary based upon the service as well as the size of the network. So for the light hands, that's very quick. Matter of fact, that's more than likely, we've been heavily involved in the deployment of the network with you. So we already have insight into the network. So the light hand service is essentially turned on within 24 to 48 hours. We're ready to provide that level of service because we have that insight from the deployment. The light SOS and the light assure service takes a little bit longer to set up. The light SOS would take, you could use a rule of thumb of a week to 10 days to make sure it gets turned on completely. And the light assure service would be roughly 2 to 3 weeks to get fully turned on as well. Let's see, another question came in. How is the gateway physically connected to the network? Good question. So within the gateway, you can think of there's two types of network connections. One is there's an RF radio, and I'll use the example of if we're putting in place a Zigbee network, Zigbee-based RF network for the lighting controls. The controllers talk on the Zigbee spectrum back, 2.4 gigahertz spectrum back to the gateway. So in the gateway is a Zigbee radio that allows it to communicate wirelessly with the controllers. The gateway then takes the data and it's going to send it out to the Lightingale software, and it can send it out in a couple of different options. It can go over an Ethernet connection, which can go to your backbone, network backbone, which could be behind your firewalls, or it could go to Ethernet out to a wireless router if you had a wireless Wi-Fi router that was outside as well. But really, Ethernet would be the first one option. And the second option is the gateway it does support a LTE SIM card, so you could use a local carrier like a Verizon or AT&T in the United States, or there's international carriers we support as well, where the gateway will then communicate via the LTE network out to the cloud or to wherever your Lightingale management server would be located. So a couple of different options as to how we do that. Hopefully that was clear. If that wasn't clear, re-ask the question if I didn't understand it. Next question, does the call center services include other monitoring outside of lighting, security cameras and blue light apps, et cetera? Yeah, so yes, so the blue light apps will monitor. Now, I want to be careful about positioning us on the blue light we're not acting as a 911 center, if you will. So when blue light, for those of you that aren't familiar with blue light, it's an application that resides on your mobile phone, and it ties into the lighting solution on a campus, let's say. So if somebody is feeling threatened, they can press the blue light button on their phone. It will then automatically bring all the lights in the general area up to very very high level of brightness, and will send a message off to local, in the case of a college university, the campus security organization, and it can then also be sending messages off to the other local authorities as well. We'll monitor and we can manage the infrastructure associated with the blue light to make sure it's working properly. We're not taking the place of the security personnel by any stretch there. So just want to draw that distinction. As far as other types of solutions, such as security cameras or noise detection, the things I mentioned up front about the smart city solutions, we have a subset of those that we support and provide directly, working with partners, that we will monitor those things as well and keep an eye on those. And some of those things we can take ownership for problem resolution, some we can't, so we'd have to talk about those on a case-by-case basis. Okay, next question. What type of reports do you provide for each service? So in the reports get progressively greater as you go up those three services I mentioned. With light hands, it'll be the reports will be around really what we did for that particular service request, and then monthly reports around the number of service requests, the types, and whether they're within the service levels or not. Now, the light SOS service will be reports around the availability of the network and various performance attributes of the network, such as energy usage, the number of notifications, escalations we sent, how long they took, did people respond, to give you a sense of whether or not the people that are supposed to respond to the problems were actually responding properly. There's also a series of reports that we can provide that can come right out of Lightingale as well. If you don't want to set those up on the Light SOS, we'd set those up for you. So if you wanted to have dashboards set up for the lighting controls, network performance, how the lights are doing, what the voltage usage was, what the energy, that's all part of that service as well. In the Light Assure, it's all those items plus reports around the performance around how we're dealing with incidents, changes, problems. You'd have a good history of what happened, why they happened. Do you see any trends developing? Those type of reports, as well as some proactive reports where we will proactively look forward and look at capacity management. We see some issues with the capacity of the network where you might have to make some changes. Okay, so for next question I see, if you're not using LTE, then each gateway requires an ISP to provide some type of connection at the street level for each gateway. Question. So yeah, if you're not using LTE, if you're not going to go over a 4G network, excuse me, then the other option, as I mentioned, was going Ethernet, which would mean, yes, the city or town or whoever our end customer is would need to have some type of network drop to that whole area, so they can connect it directly into the gateway. Now, there's other options that could come into play here. Those are the primary ones. One of the things didn't talk about here in this presentation is a device we have for a smart city platform device called the NearSky 360. And the NearSky 360 is a device that allows us to connect multiple other devices into this edge platform device, this NS360 device, and provide power, compute resources, as well as connectivity to those devices. So let me give you a quick example. The NearSky 360 plugs directly into the streetlight, just like a streetlight controller does, and the controller then plugs in the top of the NearSky 360. The NearSky 360 has multiple physical connectivity options with it. It has a USB connector, it has a Ethernet connector, it has a power over Ethernet connector, supports Bluetooth, and it also will support in about 2 months a native LTE card in it as well, but it has all these Ethernet connectivities also. It also then can send data over the lighting network. And finally, it has an AC power port in it as well. So we have some customers that are now looking at taking where they don't have fiber, don't have power, of taking the gateway and connecting it up to the NearSky device and having the NearSky device power the gateway, and then also leveraging the NearSky LTE support or Wi-Fi support to be able to send data through that mechanism. So that's another way we can bring power and connectivity to the gateways is through this Near Sky edge platform device that is, while it's intended for smart city applications, could also be used to support the gateway. I hope that was clear. I know it was a little confusing, but it just opens up more choices for our customers. Let's see. Any other questions? All right.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to present this to you today and spend about an hour with us. If you're interested in looking again at the presentation that Bob presented to you, we will be posting this on the CIMCON Lighting website under on-demand webinars within the next 24 hours. And if you have any immediate questions, you can email us at sales@simconlighting.com. And we hope that you enjoyed this time and this presentation. And thank you very much. Goodbye.